Hello everybody. Today we're working on a 2008 Jeep Grand Cherokee. This is mine. This is a limited 5.7 two-wheel drive. Today I'm going to work on changing the shocks and the springs. These are Bilstein 4600 front struts. I guess they're front shocks. They are the heavy-duty off-road shocks, and these are the factory four-wheel drive front springs. They're a little taller and have a little stiffer spring rate. So I have not found very good videos on replacing struts on WK Jeeps, so that's what I'm going to make today. Alright, so now we're under the car. I haven't jacked it up yet. This is the front of the Jeep. So for me, I've never done this before, but on other cars I've worked on, usually when you do suspension, like shocks or springs, the sway bar can cause some issues. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect. Just one side of the sway bar is okay. That's all you have to do. This is an 18mm bolt. Now I did have to use a cheater to loosen this up. It is a big bolt on the front of a heavy vehicle. But it's got and luckily I do live in South Texas, and the undercarriage is probably one of the nicest cars I've worked on. It's there's not much rust under here at all. Really, there's zero rust. So for me, this is pretty easy to work on. Now we come in here. Okay, so sway bar was loaded up a little bit. I could feel it. Okay, now that's off. Now I'm going to jack the car up, take the front wheel off, and look to see what I got to do next. Okay, so the next step for us, we want to get to the top of the strut mount. There's going to be 4 bolts hidden here on the strut tower. The strut tower bar, the brace, strut tower brace, is bolted to 2 of them, so we know it's around this area. So we're going to have to pull, unbolt the fuse boxes here. So far I see there's 1 bolt here, 1 nut there, 1 nut there. Surely there's more than just those 2, but I'm going to go ahead and pull those 2 off right now. These are just 10mm nuts. They're not on there very tight at all. I'm using a box wrench to get to this one down here. You might be able to get to it with a 1/4 inch ratchet, but so this nut came off. There's 1 more nut underneath this fuse box here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pry in here, get these little tabs undone, and that'll allow us to lift this box up and out of the way. And see if I can focus here. That's the other nut we want to take off, and that'll allow us to move this whole plastic box. And those are the strut. Those are the nuts for the strut. Those are 2 of them here. There's 2 more on the right side over here. Okay. So this connector, these wires are pretty tight when I'm trying to pull this whole assembly out. So we're just gonna try and unclip these here. Hopefully I don't damage them. I try to keep this thing nice, but we'll get those off. Alright, so I think I can get all the nuts up top now that I've got. It is not out of the car, but it's loose, and I think with a couple extensions I can get those nuts. I do have a little bit of compression in the suspension here, just to unload the studs on top of the strut. That'll help us out. So I'm gonna try. There are 18mm nuts. I'm going to try a combination of extension, swivel to get all of these out. Now that this is all loose, we can kind of move it all away. I don't know if I could show you. I don't know what I'm seeing here, but yeah, there you go. So those 4 studs, that's the top of our strut. I got those nuts off. Now, what we can do is lower our suspension here a little bit. See if we get any droop out of it. Okay. Not much there. What I saw some other guys talking about was loosening the upper ball joint, breaking that apart. I do think that is probably limiting our travel right now, as the looks of it. Okay, so now I'm going to work on taking out the strut. I think there's a few different ways to tackle it. What I'm going to do is remove the strut bolt that's holding the whole assembly onto the control arm. Okay, so I got this nut loose. This is I'm using a 15/16 socket, but it should be a 24 millimeter. Everything on here is millimeter. I'm sorry, metric. So I got that loose. Alright, so I've decided to remove the upper ball joint from the upright here. So I've got the nut loose. This is a tapered fit. It's going to be tight. I have this small puller here that you can rent or buy from any of the auto parts stores. We're going to see if I can pop this loose here. Alright, so there's a gap there. It's nice and loose. Someone's got an air horn. The puller worked. I put the puller up inside of the nut here. I kind of messed up the plastic on the nylock side of it, but that's okay. Alright, so since we're replacing the strut, we're going to have to get the spring off. And the strut mount, this top here, this nut is what's holding this entire assembly together. Now you do not want to try and take that nut off, because this spring is still under a small amount of compression. And this is a heavy vehicle, so it has a very high spring rate. So what we do is, we go down to the store, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, whoever. I'm an O'Reilly's man myself. And you grab so this is a McPherson Strut spring compressor. This front suspension is not a McPherson Strut, but the strut assembly is the same, so they should work for us. I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, now we're starting to tighten it up. So now we're going to slowly tighten each one up. Now you don't need a pneumatic impact for this, but it does make life a lot easier. Make sure you go even, and that does happen sometimes where it gets stuck. I use a 3/4. It's a 19/3/4. It's probably 3/4 is America. And I probably should have been using that one the whole time. Alright, next step, sorry there's a lot of noise now. Got the compressor and the grinder going. So next step, we got the spring off. using the impact, the top here was, the top of the strut was a little rusty, so it was spinning the strut shaft here. And I just put some vice grips on it very lightly. This is a hardened surface. Doesn't even hurt it at all, but just enough force to keep it from spinning, and it popped it right off. So we got the spring off. Now we want to remove this guy. I believe this is a 21 millimeter. Probably, this is a taper fit on here. I'm gonna go beat it with a hammer to get it out. Alright, so here's our new Bilstein. I'll show you the other shock how bad it is, but this is our new 4600, and we're just gonna reassemble it in reverse. I'm gonna put a little lube here on the inside in case I gotta take this apart again. This probably shouldn't rust, but because the shock body's painted. Never hurts. I'm sure that's how they imagined you'd put them on. Right there. They bump up against the stop here. We're good to go. Let me put some grease on here too. These things are kind of exposed. Not grease, but white lithium grease. It's nice because it'll dry up, but it'll leave a lubricant powder on it. And so the dry lubricant is nice because it prevents dirt from getting stuck to it, like what you would normally get from a grease. Gonna make sure this is on here nice and tight. No torque specs needed here. Okay, now we're going to put the spring back on. For me, I'm replacing the springs, as I talked about at the beginning. Yeah, we got the driver's side done. Now we're going to do the passenger side. I think I'm going to skip everything down here because it should be very similar to the other side. It's actually going to be identical as far as all the bolts down here, but this side is different. This side has the coolant box reservoir. You can get to 2 of the strut nuts here on this side. You can get to the other one here. The fourth one, of course, to make things harder for us, is underneath this box. For this, though, it looks pretty simple. I think we've got just this one nut down here. It's going to be, I believe, I've got an 8 mil here. Yep, it's going to be an 8 millimeter. And then you've got, where am I? There you go, this guy to undo. These are kind of a pain. Usually you can spin them off with a flathead. You got this Christmas tree clip here. That should be it. Might need to undo this guy. That's not a big deal. Okay, got all 4 of these nuts off here. Then we're gonna go do the same process as the other side. We're going to, oops, sorry, undo the lower strut mount bolt. That'll allow the whole strut assembly to come out. We're gonna loosen up the upper ball joint. We're gonna get that out of there, drop everything down. One thing I forgot to mention on the other side is when you remove the upper ball joint here, the whole upright wants to swing out. And just keep an eye on your brake line, because this is kind of what's holding everything together once you do that. So just don't put a lot of tension on it, you'll be okay. That's about it.